Next on Unsolved Mysteries. 5 friends on a fishing trip vanish in a storm. 10 years later and 2,000 miles away, a grave is found containing the remains of one of the men. What happened to the rest? It's called the Devil's Backbone, a haunted patch of Texas hill country where restless spirits are as common as coyotes. A young woman runs out of gas on a busy highway. Moments later, she's fighting for her life at 70 miles an hour. And residents of a nudist club find out that one of their most popular members is a smooth-talking con artist who has been arrested in more than a dozen states. Join me for these intriguing stories, plus updates on cases solved by you. I'm Dennis Farina, and this is Unsolved Mysteries. The town of Hana on the Hawaiian island of Maui. On a clear February morning, 5 local men left this small village to go pleasure fishing in a 17-foot Boston whaler named the Sarah Joe. The men, Benjamin Kalama, Ralph Mayukini, Scott Moorman, Patrick Wosner, and Peter Hanchett, were all experienced fishermen.
When they left at about 10 in the morning, the weather was very calm, and it was a nice clear day. And they gathered their equipment together and prepared the boat.
In the early afternoon, the wind suddenly changed direction.
The wind switching around, and instead of coming from the normal direction, which is from the east, northeast, it switched and came from the mountains, blowing out to sea. And this concerned me a great deal, so I told Dave, say, we better get down the coast, see if we can spot those boys and wave them in.
As the storm grew, John Hanchett looked for the Sarah Joe.
By this time, it was really blowing a gale, and the rain was beginning to come down, and it was storming. And we went out of Hana Harbor about a half a mile and then down the coast. And I still didn't see any sign of the boys, but it was a very rough trip, and the oceans were fierce. I'd never seen them get that rough.
Hi, John Hanchett, John Nod. Nice to meet you, Johnny. Say, we lost the boat off Hana yesterday.
The next day, John continued the search with the help of marine biologist John Naughton.
To think that this man was out all day yesterday in 30 to 40 knot winds and 20 to 25 foot seas in this channel, looking for his son.
You're hoping coming in that someone had seen something during the day and they'd have some encouraging news, but they had the same news that we brought in. That was no sign of the boys, no sign of the boat, no sign of anything.
The following day, the Coast Guard joined the search for the Sarah Joe.
The initial place where you start searching was very ill-defined because we weren't really sure exactly where the Sarah Joe had gone fishing. So it encompassed a relatively large area initially that first day, and then the area gets bigger and bigger and bigger. When the search was finally suspended, 5 days later, we had searched 73,000 square miles.
Over the next few weeks, the Hana residents combed the local beaches looking for any sign of the missing Boston whaler. Despite all their efforts, no trace of the Sarah Joe or the 5 fishermen was ever found. And then 10 years later, a surprising coincidence led to a major break in the case. 2,000 miles west of Hawaii in the Marshall Islands.
Captain, come take a look at this.
John Naughton, the marine biologist who had searched for the Sarah Joe a decade earlier, was on a wildlife expedition thousands of miles from Hawaii. On a deserted atoll called Tianji, he spotted a small boat.
At first we thought it was a boat moored offshore, so we approached closer, and then we saw that it was what looked to be a battered small boat on the island itself.
John and his crew went on shore to inspect the wreckage.
There were still a few letters and numbers from the registration number, and immediately I saw it started with an HA, which indicates that the boat was registered in the Hawaiian Islands, which of course is over 2,000 miles away.
About 60 yards away, John's crew found a shallow grave.
When we got up there, we could see immediately that there was a human jaw bone protruding out of the pile of rocks. At that time, we had no way of knowing that the grave site was associated with the wrecked whaler.
After finding no signs of anyone else on the island, the men contacted the Coast Guard. They ran a check of the registration number and made a positive ID. It was the Sarah Joe. The grave was excavated and parts of a human skeleton were uncovered. Dental records identify the remains as Scott Mormon, one of the 5 missing men. A strange clue was also found buried with the skeleton.
It was a sheaf of paper, and I'd say a book, except it was not bound, probably 3 inches by 3 inches by maybe 3/4 of an inch thick. But between each one of these pieces of paper, there was a very small square piece of tinfoil material. We have not been able to determine who placed that there or what purpose it serves.
Experts say that the Sarah Joe could have drifted 2,000 miles to the Marshall Islands. If so, it would have arrived in about 3 months. But according to the brother of one of the missing men, a U.S. government survey of Tianji, a full 6 years after the men disappeared, found no trace of the Sarah Joe. If this is true, where was the boat in the time between its disappearance and the government survey?
In 1985, he said there was no Sarah Joe. No Sarah Joe on the Tianji Island. Where was the Sarah Joe?
Who buried Scott Mormon? And what is the significance of the pad of paper found in the grave? These unanswered questions have left some wondering if any of the other men might still be alive.
Every time I'm looking at the ocean, my thoughts go to him. I see him way out in the island someplace, alive and waiting.
Today in Hana, the friends and families of the missing men wait for answers that may never come. The key clue that might solve this mystery is the notepad found in the shallow grave. If you have any information about this case, please log on to our website at unsolved.com. Next, a Texas ranch is said to be swarming with ghosts. The locals call it the most haunted place in the country.
I was feeling extremely scared.
It was a ghost. It had to be. I didn't tell anybody about it.
That chilling sensation I got kind of stayed with me.
There's something here. What it is, I don't know.
I've had probably 25, 30 reportings of different spirits and ghosts from different people. They'll never leave. I'll be dead and gone, they'll be here.
They call it the Devil's Backbone. Over the centuries, Apache warriors, explorers from Spain, and Confederate soldiers have all passed through this area. Today, their spirits live on, or so says ranch owner Bert Wall.
I had a situation one time where I was finishing a particular thing I was writing, and it was late at night, about midnight, and the dogs started barking a little bit, but not loud. The wind was blowing. It was a cold night. I looked through the window. That's when I saw the Spanish monk. I don't believe it could have been a person. There's no way. He was definitely from the 1700s. He was dressed that way in his habit or whatever, his cross hanging. I probably watched him for all 15 seconds maybe, which is a long time. He disappeared in a way that was more of a gone.
The Spanish monk is just one of the many spirits that are said to haunt Berts Ranch. Another ghost was spotted by John Myers, who was on the property to hunt deer.
The stand I was on was a tree stand. Once I got up and situated myself, you have to be real quiet, real still, and watch for the deer. As I was sitting up in the stand waiting, and that's what you do a lot in deer hunting, is just wait, I heard footprints, or footsteps, I should say, walking around the tree, the base of the tree. I couldn't see because I was sitting on a platform. And it kept just walking in a circle, whatever it was. I started getting a little eerie feeling because it wouldn't move away from the tree. It just kept going in this circle. And finally, it just stopped. It didn't walk away. The sounds just stopped. And the sun started going down, and it started getting darker. And I thought, well, I'm just going to get on off the tree and walk back to the house. Didn't see any footprints, twigs broken or branches broken or anything like that. I kept getting this feeling that someone was watching me. So I stopped and I turned back and looked toward the tree, and there was an Indian. It was a very cold night. It was in the 20s, and he was without a shirt. And he was looking at me rather strangely, like, who are you? So immediately I turned around and started back toward the house. I noticed to my right, out of the corner of my eye, that he was there, walking parallel with me. I didn't feel threatened by him. It's just, you know, like, who are you and what are you doing here? And I made about 2 steps toward him, and when I did, he vanished. It was a ghost. It had to be, you know, to be able to do that.
Lynn Gentry, one-time foreman at Berts Ranch, tells of a sighting he had while staying in the bunkhouse.
I was kind of relaxing, and off in the distance I heard what at first I thought was thunder. Then as the sound came closer, I realized that it was horses' hooves in a very fast run. There were several horses with probably 15 or 20 riders on them, what I believe to have been Confederate soldiers. They certainly looked real to me at the time, but then when you begin to slowly realize that, hey, what I'm looking at is not real, you know, these are ghosts.
John Villarreal was hiking the property with his friends Corey and BC when he had an encounter he still can't explain. John claims he not only saw a supernatural vision of a wolf, but that the spirit actually possessed him.
Corey and BC were off in another part of the creek, and I got this sensation and basically saw a vision of a wolf. I was looking up, watching it come towards me, and it leapt at me. And where it would have hit me, I felt just a chilling sensation go through me.
We didn't see anything mysterious. It's all what John says that he saw. When we got back into the truck, it got extremely cold in the truck. He was sitting in between BC and I. I was sitting on the passenger side, so the whole left-hand side of my body got extremely numb and cold. It's almost like if there was a big block of ice sitting next to me. When we got back to the ranch that night, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if my friend was going to be all right. I was actually pretty worried about him.
According to his friends, John fell into some kind of a trance. When he spoke, he seemed to know about Indian massacres, ambushes, and other little-known events from the history of the Devil's Backbone.
While I was standing there, I was feeling extremely scared. And all of a sudden, a big gust of wind came out of the kitchen. I was just in shock. I didn't know what that was. I stood there kind of frozen and kept asking questions. What was that? What was that? And that's when someone said, I think the spirit's left him. I think it's gone now.
I don't know for sure what kind of spirit was inside of me, but something that knew about this ranch, that knew about the history of the ranch, had to be going through me. And it's hard to believe, but basically that's what would have had to happen.
Why is this particular area so irresistible to spirits?
The Devil's Backbone is haunted because it's loved. It's loved by these spirits. It's loved by myself. And I imagine someday when I'm gone, I will haunt this same son of a gun.
If you have any doubts about the haunted happenings around Burkwall's property, then you try spending a night in the bunkhouse. You too might just have a run-in with history. Next, witnesses watch in horror as a 19-year-old woman falls from a speeding truck. Police believe that she was abducted. A typical spring day just outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. Lunch hour traffic is suddenly interrupted by a horrific scene. A white pickup truck swerves erratically through traffic. Inside, a terrified female passenger struggles for her life with the male driver. Frantic callers dial 911, but no one can help.
She's hanging out. She's about to fall out the door.
19-year-old Carson Prince is rushed to the hospital with massive head injuries.
While doctors tried to save Carson's life, police began their investigation. Identifying the driver of the pickup was their top priority. Did Carson know the man? And if not, what was she doing in his truck?
Carson was a neat kid, a very caring and giving young lady, but she didn't expect anything in return.
She was very, very funny. Carson could always make you laugh, even if she didn't feel like laughing inside.
Carson had earned a scholarship to the University of Arkansas.
Carson was that friend who everybody adored. She was the person that was, more excited about your stories than you were. She was more into everybody else than she was herself.
During her sophomore year, she left school and moved back with her dad. He recalls the last time they spoke.
Here you go, sleepyhead.
Thank you.
As I was heading out the door to go to work, I passed by her bedroom and she said, "Would you get me a glass of water?" You know how a daughter can pull on your heartstrings. I got her a glass of water and came in and sat down beside her bed, and she sat up. And we talked about what she was going to do during the day.
I think I'm going to go into
She was going to go to school and pick up the forms for registering in the university there in Little Rock.
Carson never made it to the campus. Later that day, Carson's mother, who was a county prosecutor, was returning from lunch when she was told the awful news.
Suzanne, Carson's been in an accident.
An accident?
She's at the hospital.
Co-workers rushed Suzanne to the emergency room.
Where's Carson? Have you seen her?
She just got out of surgery.
What?
I don't know. Doctor, how is she?
Yes, she's out of surgery and she's in intensive care. There were some spinal injuries and swelling of the brain. the swelling doesn't go down, we may lose her.
You could tell very early on that Carson wasn't going to pull through. Her mother and I were there, and it's very peaceful. We stayed at Carson's side throughout the day as she slowly slipped away.
19-year-old Carson Prince died at 10:30 that night. Investigators were already piecing together the events leading up to her death. Her Ford Bronco was found on Interstate 430, just a half a mile from where she was pushed from the pickup. The gas tank was empty. Several witnesses recalled seeing Carson after she pulled over to the shoulder of the highway. There was a gas station within walking distance, so Carson's next move does not make sense to her parents.
There's something strange in the fact that she didn't leave her vehicle and walk a quarter of a mile to the gas station to get gas or to get help.
Witnesses saw a man with a white pickup truck stop near Carson's Bronco. He was holding a gas can. At some point, Carson either got into or was forced into his truck.
I don't think Carson would have gotten into a truck with somebody she didn't know just because she was out of gas. I have a hard time believing she'd get in the truck with a stranger.
The next thing witnesses saw was the struggle going on inside the truck's cab as it sped down the interstate at nearly 70 miles an hour.
Carson was being beaten. Carson was fighting back, trying to defend herself. And that somehow the guy reached across, the door was opened, and Carson was shoved out of the door and trying to hang on while the truck was speeding away, and hung on as long as she could and then fell out and fell to her death.
And the driver continued, which naturally in the highway patrol guy's mind says, okay, well, this, obviously this guy's left the scene of an accident here where someone's critically injured, so we got to find him.
Authorities learned that Carson was in a stormy relationship with a young man that she had met while working at the local country club.
How you doing, sweetie?
I have to go back to work.
I told her, I was like, Carson, this guy's not good for you. He's not good for you at all. All he does is make you cry. He makes you upset. He's not doing anything for you at all.
The man was known to police as a suspected drug dealer.
Yeah, let's do this about 7:30.
It was believed that Carson's boyfriend had used her car a few times when making deliveries.
I told her that if she were out with him and he got arrested, she was going to get arrested too.
What's up, man? What do you got?
Whatever his fate was, she would share it. She didn't seem to be too worried about that.
Hi, hon.
The day before her death, Carson learned that her boyfriend had been arrested. She believed her mother, as a deputy district attorney, might have had something to do with the arrest.
I didn't give Brian anything. Yes, you did. He would have gotten probation.
And at that point, I got afraid. I thought that he was outside. The Bronco had pulled into the carport, lights on, engine running. I thought he might be going to come to the door and hurt me, blaming me for a prison sentence that I didn't even know anything about. And I told her, y'all need to leave. And that's the last time I saw her. So I find it a very strange coincidence that within 12 hours of her telling me that, she's on the side of the road, fatally injured.
Although police were suspicious of Carson's boyfriend from the start, he was cleared of any involvement in her death. Police then wondered if someone had been stalking Carson or if she just ran out of gas at the wrong place at the wrong time.
I wish I had some answers. I don't think there will ever be justice for Carson, but I think there will be truth. And I will settle for that.
Update. 5 years after Carson's death, a man named Stephen A. Talley walked into the local sheriff's department and admitted to killing her. Talley said he'd pushed Carson out of his truck during an attempt to abduct and rape her. He also confessed to a double murder. He'd raped and killed a woman after first killing her fiancé. Stephen Talley pleaded guilty to 3 counts of capital murder in exchange for a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Next, a con man defrauds his friends and neighbors at a Florida nudist camp and then disappears. Sunny Sands Resort in Northeast Florida is one of the more than 250 nudist clubs registered with the American Association for Nude Recreation. Outsiders might consider public nudity strange or even sexually suggestive. But to the dozens of families living at Sunny Sands, being nude is only being natural.
Good morning, may I help you?
Hi, my name's Rusty. On a warm winter day, a clever con man calling himself Garland Houston Russell, Rusty for short, arrived at Sunny Sands and asked to join the camp.
Rusty was immediately likable. He was not high pressure. He explained to us that he was looking for a place to live, but he understood when we told him that he couldn't move in right away, that we needed time to have him get to know us and us to get to know him.
Being a single guy, we're a little careful. And as far as, I think probably the easiest way to say is he was very friendly.
Rusty told the camp owners that he was about to inherit his deceased parents' estate and that he would soon be wealthy.
And we'd like to have you stay. The rental's available, and if you'd like it, it's yours.
Appreciate it.
Welcome aboard.
Everybody seemed to like Rusty. He did everything for everybody. The part that amazed me, he really loved children. And my children loved him. They thought of him as like a big brother or an uncle.
What camp residents didn't know was that their new friend Garland Russell was a slick con artist. They would learn too late that he had 38 known aliases and had been arrested in 14 states. Rusty renovated an empty store in town and stocked it with videotapes he said he had acquired while in the Air Force. Police now suspect all of the tapes were stolen. For members of Sunny Sands, he offered a special deal. He sold the tapes to his friends and then bought them back at a slightly higher price.
You're gonna give me a check for $500.
He says that it was a way for him to avoid paying taxes.
The people we spoke to who had invested with Rusty early on, everybody had seemed to have made their money back, their principal plus their 20% interest.
Who is it? Rusty. Oh, Rusty.
After 4 months, Rusty wanted to expand the store. He convinced a neighbor to give him a $20,000 loan.
How are you people?
Oh, great.
Listen, I have an opportunity to share some wealth with you. Let me sit
Just 6 weeks later, he asked a second couple for $20,000.
See, what I want to do is to save some money on...
He didn't tell this couple about the first investor.
By selling my store to you and
He needed money to buy more tapes, more equipment, and so forth. And we wanted to make a little interest on the money. So it was just an investment as far as we were concerned and helping out somebody at the same time.
Hey, Robert, now don't you fill up on that because...
Rusty flourished at Sunny Sands. Surrounded by families who supported his business, he seemed to have found his place in the world. Then, 6 months after he arrived, Garland Russell's charade began to fall apart. It started when the 11-year-old daughter of his closest friend ran from his trailer in tears.
She said that he threw her against the wall, and then he threw her on the bed, and that he was touching her all over. The rest is a little personal. And in trying to do that, that's when she hit him. And she hit him 3 times before she got away from him.
State attorneys issued a warrant for Rusty's arrest for sexual battery against a child under 12.
County Sheriff's Department, we have a warrant for your arrest.
We handcuffed him, put him in the back of the marked car, and took him over to operations to be processed and to try to interview him. He verified the little girl's story, except he put a different slant on it. He put a different light on it. He did say that, yeah, they were nude and they were in the trailer. Of course, that's not so unusual. They're in a nudist camp. And he admitted to touching her, touching the little girl, pretty much all over her body. The way he explained it was, he said, we were having fun, we were wrestling.
When Rusty was arrested, nobody believed it. The people in the camp were all shocked. You know, here we were taking this man who everybody liked. He was everybody's friend, everybody's big brother, and turn around and say, well, he did something so despicable. And they turned against us. It was a lot easier to say, oh no, that child's lying. You know, it's easier to blame the child than it is to say, well, this guy who's so nice isn't, you know, as nice as we thought.
Some of Rusty's friends convinced the judge that Rusty should be released on a $25,000 bail. Rusty's landlord, Bob Pickens, put up the money.
I was surprised when Rusty was arrested, and very frankly, he convinced me that he was innocent. That, I suppose, indicates some naivety on my part, but he was very convincing.
At the same time, other friends were also trying to raise Rusty's bail. But when they took a look at his business accounts, they were shocked to discover that he was overdrawn at the bank and had lied to them about what he owned.
The facade that Rusty had built about being the honest businessman that he was is now coming apart like a bad brick wall. And in fact, if he was a bad guy financially, the chances are he was a bad guy with the child molestation charges.
I was really shocked. I was told by the investigator he was not going to be granted bail, but then he managed to con his way into it.
During the next 48 hours, Rusty convinced Bob Pickens to buy the video business, saying his reputation as a businessman was now ruined. Bob later learned that he was the 3rd person to buy Rusty's inventory.
As soon as I found out there were other individuals, I made every effort to have Rusty apprehended and the bail removed, but I was unsuccessful.
Rusty raised still more money by selling his car to 2 different people. Then he rented another car and disappeared. He never showed up for his court date.
When Rusty took off, I felt sick, disappointed, surprised, and somewhat of a fool. This guy took us all for a ride.
No matter what happens, we know we'll never get our money back. But right at this point, the money is immaterial. Right now, the big thing I want Rusty caught is what he did to that child.
I want him caught. I want him punished, and I want him stopped. I want him to go to jail where he can't get his hands on other children.
Update. On the night of our broadcast, viewers in South Carolina called to identify Rusty as a man they knew as Ronald Edward Kent. He was arrested the next morning. Kent was none other than Garland Russell. He was later found guilty of molesting the 11-year-old girl and will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Coming up, perhaps you can help find a hit-and-run driver whose victim was an 11-year-old boy.
Yeah, but she'll sneak out.
16-year-old Christie Wismer and 18-year-old Dave Carson shared a 6-month romance. After breaking up, they learned that Christie was pregnant.
This isn't helping anything. Let's just be calm.
Christie and Dave had to make some hard choices. Neither was interested in getting married, so they decided to give up their child for adoption. Over the next few months, they grew apart and eventually lost touch. Christie gave birth to a baby girl.
They took the baby away right away. And after they wheeled me back to my room and put me into the bed, my mother come up and talked to me for a little while, and she asked if I would walk down and look at the baby.
She's the one down front.
You know, I knew that I loved her, but I couldn't take her home.
Christie Wismer never stopped thinking about her daughter. More than 20 years later, Christie and Dave got back together after a high school reunion. They were married soon after and immediately began searching for their child. Update. The night of our broadcast, a woman named Katie Jacobs called to say that she was Christie and Dave's long-lost daughter. 3 weeks later, they welcomed Katie back into their lives.
How was your flight?
Good.
You made it in Chicago, huh?
Yeah.
Katie's husband, Rick, and their 1.5-year-old daughter, Michaela, came along for the reunion.
I felt kind of awkward because here I was talking to somebody that, was like a major part of my life, but I had never met before. So it was kind of strange. It feels real good because it answers a lot of questions. It just kind of fills something that, wasn't there.
Getting back together, it's nice to be able to think about Katie and be happy and know that everything's okay, and she's been good.
I've been hoping for this for 22 years, and it's just so hard to put it into words. Finally, my life's complete. I found Katie.
Chicago police have been investigating an extremely tough hit-and-run case. They're looking for a man who goes by the nickname of Kachimba. Perhaps you can help.
The Logan Square section of Chicago was a close-knit middle-class neighborhood. Pedro Santiago Jr. was born there. It was a place where he always felt safe. Pedro, a 5th grader, was a good student and a talented athlete. By the age of 11, he had already earned a black belt in karate.
Hi, Mom. Just calling to let you know that I'm home. How did school go today?
One December day, Pedro came straight home from school and called his mother at work.
When I'm done with my homework, can I go over to Eric's and show him the ball blaster?
As Pedro left his house, 2 teenagers were walking back from the corner market.
Well, I never seen anything like that happen, so I couldn't believe that it happened, and I started walking towards the car. And then, I seen that it was real. I started running towards the car. The driver, he got out of his car. He started cursing. He started hitting his car. I guess he was upset with himself for doing it. Pedro was he was trying to talk, but my friend was telling him, not to waste his energy.
Rick, I'm gonna call an ambulance. Don't let him leave.
Seconds later, the driver jumped into his black Oldsmobile and took off.
When I was on the phone talking to the man from the fire station, I seen him pass right by me.
Pedro was rushed to the emergency room, and the hospital chaplain called his mother.
When I answered the phone and I heard the voice at the other end, I kind of got shocked. So I said, what happened? And then this other person talked to me and said, it's an emergency. Your son is in the hospital.
Pedro had massive head injuries. His parents were given only a few seconds to comfort him before he was taken into the operating room.
When we got to the surgery room, and they said, well, you could kiss him now.
Okay, you can touch him. Move forward, we don't have a lot. Okay, that's all the time we've got.
And then they took him in. They said surgery would be about an hour and a half or 2 hours. Then we went in the waiting room. And we kept on waiting and waiting.
Pedro clung to life for 10 days, but never regained consciousness. He was buried the day after Christmas. With Pedro's death, the hit-and-run accident became a case of manslaughter. Police put out an all-points bulletin for the car's owner, a Cuban immigrant known on the streets as Cachimba. When they couldn't locate him, Pedro's father hit the streets.
I went to a lot of bars, a lot of places in Chicago. And I asked everybody, did you know Cachimba? He said, yeah, but he left Chicago. It's not in here anymore.
It's very hard to let go. I tried. And just the happy times and that we spent with Pedro, and all I see is his smiling face. And, we just miss him a lot.
I know I won't give my son back, but I would like to see him get caught and be him locked up.
Cachimba's real name is Geraldo Gonzalez. He has not been charged with any crime, but police would like to question him. Gonzalez is Cuban, stands 5 feet 8 inches, and weighs 160 pounds. He may be living in New York, Florida, Michigan, or Illinois. If you have any information, please log on to our website at unsolved.com.